Day 460 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is a quick update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. And we'll slide on across to those losses as currently Russia is sitting on more than 207,000 military personnel losses so far. And then as for the hardware losses, 4 tanks, 11 APVs and 10 artillery. Oh, and 2 air defense systems there as well. So that all continues to be impressive. And next up, as an echo to the past of my previous updates there, today I'll quickly show you my homegrown hobby of Ukrainian captured and working equipment from the Russian army. As this information still doesn't appear anywhere else on the internet in this format currently. Bit of a shame, so I've created it there myself. And as for the stats here, we can see this is literally why we call Russia as being Ukraine's #1 arms supplier. And I know a few of you have mentioned this infographic and said that you've missed it. However, I'm finding that it's becoming or starting to become less relevant right alongside Russia's army becoming less relevant. And I'm being serious too, it's not a joke, because what I mean by that is that the Ukrainian forces have become much more effective exterminators of Russian military hardware since the last time I posted one of these types of updates. But also, at the same time, Russia has less and less to donate as they become less and less equipped on the front lines, which makes this infographic less susceptible to massive daily swings or updates in values. But I do promise to still show it to you guys from time to time, and I've always been a fan of this one still personally. Then we'll head back across to the map there today and move again to Russia, as there was another big fire in Russia, this time in St. Petersburg, as a warehouse was on fire there, though Russian media reported that it is unclear what caused the fire. But I'm sure Sergei the Smoker was hanging around somewhere. Then moving back down the map to Ukraine, so just after 3 a.m. local time, air defenses were activated in many parts of Ukraine, including Melnitsky, Poltava, Odessa, Vinnytsia, and the Kyiv capital, as several Russian bombers became active and performed airstrikes into Ukraine. And even just an hour ago, Ukrainian civilians were using their underground metros as shelters from the strikes. In fact, we see the resilience in this photo where students are studying in these underground shelters during the raids. But even still, it's a pretty tough image. Then, as for the topsoil, here's a shot taken just earlier of a Russian missile fragment that fell into a parking lot in the Kyiv capital, and another one nearby on the road in Kyiv as well. And so all in all, Ukraine destroyed 37 out of 40 of the Russian cruise missiles today, as well as 29 Russian kamikaze UAVs of about 35 that were sent Ukraine's way, which are very hopeful rates of interceptions of these Russian missile salvos and the kamikaze drone intercepts as well, as Ukrainian air defense capabilities continue to grow and become more effective every month. And I'm not saying this out of complacency. They still do need to get more and more air defense systems from their NATO partners and other allies. Then we'll head right into the Donbass there today. So explosions were reported near Kadivka, which is fairly deep behind enemy lines, as you can see there. In fact, they call it Stakhanov, which was a Soviet name given to it in about 1978. And although I have no photos for this one, it is a main logistical point between front lines and the Russian border. Then we'll head across a little bit west to Bakhmut, as there is still a number of frontline contact point clashes between both sides. Now, the map did have a slight update today on the southern flank. We'd have to zoom right in for that one. So we'll go to the date map, we'll show you yesterday, then push back to today, where we can see a push forward by the Ukrainian forces. Just a slight little bit, nothing major really to speak of. But it is all very much certainly a concerning zone for the Russian forces at the moment. And I've also got to say here, it's interesting how online trolls, comment trolls, make fun of the lack of a fully fledged Ukrainian counteroffensive thus far. But here's the thing, it's only the Russian side that does these kinds of meat grinder assaults without any respect for their own people, just like we've seen in places just like right here in Bakhmut. And by contrast, Ukraine is instead gearing up for a planned counteroffensive with minimal losses. That's what you call what true military tacticians do. I mean, sure, you can play the cannon fodder approach for some cheap, small gains, which is exactly what we've seen with Russia in this region, as they were eking out meters, just meters per day over the course of 10 months to get that Bakhmut Pyrrhic victory / political win. But then we all saw what happened in places like the Kyiv capital, then Kharkiv, then Kherson after that, where it almost felt like we were seeing map gains and liberations by the Ukrainian forces faster than you could blink. But the moral of the story might be here today that the Russian army appears to have a hard time learning from its own mistakes. And so without large societal change in Russia, their systematically flawed military is in many ways just doomed to keep making the same mistakes over and over. Then we'll move down a little bit on the map as missile strikes were reported at Yivka. Now this is near Mariupol. Have to zoom right down for that one there. With the resulting explosion aftermath slightly taking on the form of a mini mushroom cloud. And in this instance, it was reported to be a Russian base that was hit. Then moving across on the map to Zaporizhia today, so we're just based on pure probability. I was expecting it to be a quieter day for the location of Berdyansk. But oh no, the AFU clearly has their sights set on completely demoralizing any Russian military installations in this region again. Then we'll head across to the news today, as it is a bit of a shorter video, unfortunately. But a rally was held in Russia in support of the election of Prigozhin as president. However, Putin's authorities banned the rally with the excuse that the documents for its holding were submitted late. Which is real rich coming from a sitting president, i.e. bunker boy Putin, that literally changed the constitution so that he could have endless term limits and basically be president for life. Meanwhile, in other news of another figure that's larger than life, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, the clown, calls Western plans to supply fighter jets to Ukraine as an unacceptable escalation. I'm actually surprised this time that he or Putin didn't threaten with the nuclear card again. But after saying it about 10 times already throughout this war, it tends to lose a lot of its meaning anyway, and especially so after performing an unprovoked and illegal invasion into another country, just as Russia has done to Ukraine. So them's the breaks. Then in some other news, the war is going so well for Russia that Russians now might have to work 6 days a week with only 5 days pay. So Russian state-backed media and business groups have petitioned the Economic Ministry of Russia to authorize a 6-day week for workers in the face of the economic demands of the war. And even one of Russia's top propagandists, Mariga Simonyan, proposed that citizens should work for 2 extra hours in the munitions factory each day after they finish their regular jobs. I mean, do you want a revolution, Russia? Because this is how you start one, by further degrading the quality of life of the people. And it's as if they're forgetting the reasons for the fall of the Soviet Union back in 1991. It's simply a system that did not work. The economy was weak and in collapse. It couldn't afford itself. The citizens demanded more political freedoms and more human rights as well. So these current political reform recommendations inside of Russia are going to be pretty difficult to get the popular support of the people for. Unless Russia happens to, forget its history and start to regress again. Then in a final quick funny to round it all off today, guys, so Russia is running low on armed vehicles for this war, something we already know. It's a real sad state of affairs when Russian army personnel are quite outraged by this. So what does Russia do? Priest-blessed Scooby-Doo vans sporting the Z symbols, of course. Because nothing says invincible like spraying a bit of holy water on a non-military vehicle. And Russia is actually using a lot of these Scooby-Doo vans for its war efforts now, probably for the last 6 to 9 months in my recollections. They can't get enough of these tin cans, which is what the Russian soldiers actually call them. And tin cans is by no means a compliment. But hey, perhaps they're even better now that they've been buffed with a War Priest holy damage increase. And so with stuff like this, Russian trolls in the comments section will deny the ineffective nature of these vehicles with odd responses saying things like, oh, they're amazing, they work, they never break down. Pretend I'm saying that in a Russian accent. But we use the term heavy armor in the military for a reason, as you need off-road tanks and other heavily armored fighting vehicles to actually support a war, let alone an invasion. But hey, if they like them so much, they can keep them. So that's pretty much it for today, guys. A bit of a shorter video. I'm not sure if I'm in tomorrow, perhaps the next, if not tomorrow, or the following. But yeah, thanks again for your support, all the likes and the comments. I'm trying to keep in the comments section as much as I can with the busy schedules. But yeah, thanks again, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.